Hi, everyone. My name is Lily Slavin, and I am one of the Charge Center Foundation board members. Welcome to this month's Ask the Expert session. I will start by reviewing our accessibility features for the webinar. We have two ASL interpreters joining us tonight, and they will be spotlighted throughout the webinar. If you would like to read the closed captioning, please click on the CC button on the bottom of your screen. Ask the Expert is a series hosted by the Charge Center Foundation about once a month, in which we bring in experts in the field to talk about their areas of expertise. Tonight, we have the first of a three-part series in which we're partnering with the National Center on Deafblindness to learn about deafblindness and its impact on learning. Tonight, we have two presenters who are joining us to teach us more about deafblindness. I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. So today they'll be presenting for until about 8. Ooh, now I'm messing up my time. We'll have about 15 minutes at their end for questions, and there'll be about an hour of presentation. We have a Q&A function, so please put your questions in there throughout the presentation, and we'll get to them at the end. Links to all resources will be shared in the chat box throughout. And tonight's session will be recorded and available on the Charge Center Foundation website. With that, I will turn it over to our presenters.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kristi Probst, and I work for the National Center on Deafblindness. I have the joy of being the initiative lead for interveners and qualified personnel. And presenting with me tonight is Jen, so I'll let you introduce yourself, Jen.
Hi, everyone. I am Jen Chow, and I am a son. My son is a 15-year-old charger with deafblindness.
So I'm going to share my screen and get the presentation started. Maybe. Here we go. All right. For our first webinar in this three-part series, we're going to be discussing deafblindness and its impact on learning. And we hope to really be able to provide you with some key resources for you families as well as your educational teams. Before we really get going tonight, I want to acknowledge that this presentation, this webinar, is not just for Charge families, but it's also for families who have children who are deafblind, state deafblind projects, parent centers, and anyone else who wants to join us. We realize that as family members, you may not identify your child with the term deafblind, but rather maybe by their etiology or their disability. You could call them chargers, or you could refer to them as your child who has Usher syndrome. You could also refer to them as deaf plus or another identifier. But you are here because your child does have a combined vision and hearing loss. So let's get started. As you know, deafblindness is a very unique disability. A child who is deafblind has a combination of hearing and vision loss where those senses are reduced, distorted, or missing entirely. Most children who are deafblind do have some usable vision and hearing. Vision and or hearing. Some are profoundly deaf and some are completely blind. Deafblindness varies from person to person based on things like the cause of the deafblindness, the level of the vision and hearing loss, and additional disabilities that may be present. Although no two children who are deafblind are alike, many share similar needs. They may need help from others to understand their world, communicate, and build social relationships. Deafblindness creates a disability of access to visual and auditory information about the environment around them, the people, the things, the events that are going on. That is a huge obstacle to learning. Without consistent and responsive, specialized support, environmental information and concepts become distorted, incomplete, and maybe even confusing to children who are deafblind, who have limited or no means to predict the events and communicate their needs to those around them. Children who are deafblind struggle to learn from the typical formative experiences that children with vision and hearing that are typically developing experience and access incidentally. Without a sense of safety and the ability to trust that others will respond to their needs, readiness to learn is compromised for most children who are deafblind, and their potential to achieve is limited. Deafblindness is a spectrum or a continuum. It is a unique condition that is not simply a disability of vision plus hearing loss. Deafblindness encompasses a whole spectrum from mildly hard of hearing plus mildly visually impaired to totally deaf and totally blind, or combinations all inside of there. It's rare that an individual who is deafblind would be completely blind and completely deaf. Either the vision and or the hearing loss can be present at birth or acquired after birth. Individuals who have a combined vision and hearing loss have unique communication, learning, and mobility challenges due to their dual sensory loss. Deafblindness is a unique and diverse condition due to the wide range of sensory capabilities, the possible presence of additional disabilities, and the age that the child acquires the vision and hearing loss. So on your screen in front of you is a table, and it's titled "The Range of Combined Vision and Hearing Loss in Deafblindness." Across the top, it says degree of vision loss and related conditions. And along the right side is the degree of hearing loss and related conditions. As I said, deafblindness is a spectrum. This table illustrates the wide spectrum of deafblindness. The boxes that are colored in the darker gray color indicate what is considered deafblind. It starts at moderate visual impairment or low vision and goes over to cortical visual impairment or CVI. And then along the hearing loss, it starts at a slight hearing loss, 16 to 25 decibels, and it goes down to central auditory processing disorder. So as you can see, this table has many columns or many rectangles within the table, and most of them are shaded. Because if someone has a moderate visual impairment or low vision, as well as a slight hearing loss, they can be considered deaf-blind. Additionally, if they had cortical visual impairment and a sensory auditory processing disorder, which is very similar to CVI, they also would be considered deaf-blind. Many people don't understand how broad the spectrum of deaf-blindness is. For instance, I was providing consultation services to a school district's Deaf Plus classroom. There were 7 students, and 5 were identified as deaf-blind. One additional student had cerebral palsy in addition to being deaf. The teacher was talking to me and told me that the student who had cerebral palsy would see things perfectly one day, but on another day she wouldn't. On sunny days, she could see great. On cloudy days, she couldn't see very much at all. Yellows and reds helped her focus, and she needed no visual clutter, and if they used a black background, it was even better. She told me many other things about this child, and I noticed that these things suggested that the student might have CVI. I urged the teacher to contact the teacher of the visually impaired to discuss this, and also to contact her state deaf-blind project to get support around how to best meet this child's needs. No one had even considered that she may have CVI and was in fact deaf-blind. So her needs were not being totally met. So what are the causes of deaf-blindness? There are more than 70 causes that have been identified. Some are so rare that only a few individuals in the world have been identified with them, and some have no known cause. On this slide, you see a number of different causes. This is not exhaustive, this is examples. It can be complications from prematurity. 10% of the population has that. 47% have deaf-blindness because they have a hereditary syndrome or disorder, like CHARGE syndrome. 14% are attributed to prenatal complications. 12% are contributed to postnatal complications. And what I think is very important to point out is that there are 17% of the population of individuals who are deaf-blind that the cause of deaf-blindness is undetermined or unknown. About 10,000 children in the United States, birth to 21, have been identified as deaf-blind. Many more have not been identified. And in some, other terms might be used, such as I said in the beginning, deaf plus, visual impairment and additional disabilities, multiple disabilities. Our kids are not all like Helen Keller, who was completely blind and profoundly deaf. I'd like to pause here and have Jen introduce herself and her family and her son to you so that you have someone that you can keep in mind as we talk about the impact on learning. Jen, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Kristi. Like I said earlier, I am Jen Chow, and I have a 15-year-old son with CHARGE syndrome. We live in North Carolina, and I can definitely relate to you having a child who is deafblind. and having jumped through many hoops and gone through many trials, I will actually try tonight to provide you with those examples of my life, of our life, and the trials that we've gone through to give you the background and just another perspective to think about. Your perspective and your experiences probably are different in some ways, but I do want to give you real life examples and experience that I have had and my family has had through our son Andrew as input as we go through this series. And you know, the statistics that Kristi just read, you know, I take myself back to when we actually first heard them and saw them and realized deafblind. What does this mean? This sounds very scary. And tonight you may be recognizing that your child may be deafblind and you had maybe never thought about that before or even realized that. So when we hear it for the first few times, it sounds very scary and you wonder, what am I going to do? How do I help my child? But as we've grown, as we've continued to grow, and we understand deafblindness, it's just a different way. The world looks different through our understanding of deafblindness, but it is not impossible. Contrary to what anyone has said in the past. There are ways our children can be supported. And for us parents, we don't have to have all of the answers. So I hope to share with you some of the ways that my family and I have learned how to release some of the control. And through my journey, how understanding for my child is not the end of the world.
Thanks, Jen. I want to point out before we go on that of the population of individuals who have been identified as deafblind, there's only 1% who have both profound hearing loss and total blindness. All right. I think I didn't go on to this slide.
It's okay.
Okay. So, all individuals who are deafblind, although they're very different from one another, struggle to obtain complete information. This creates significant barriers to learning. A combined vision and hearing loss multiplies the challenge of gathering information. It is not deaf plus blind, it is deaf times blind. Typically developing children gather information by using their vision and hearing. They pick up information naturally without even intending to learn. This is called incidental learning. This type of learning provides individuals with important information and knowledge simply by watching and listening to what is going on around them. Children who are deafblind or whose vision and hearing are compromised miss out on this important incidental learning. They can't learn what they can't detect, and they may not even know what they're missing. Over time, this ongoing lack of access to information results in difficulties in communication and concept development, and the ability to understand or participate in events. Remember, deafblindness is a disability of access. This means it limits a person's access to information that is needed for learning, communication, and development. Let's listen to Michelle Klein, the coordinator of Illinois Deafblind Services, Describe the way that limited access to incidental learning and incidental information creates a hole in the child's learning.
Unfortunately, as children who are deafblind become older, those initial lacks of information lead to more learning problems. If you've never been able to touch a monkey and you've never been able to hear it or see it, how do you even know that monkeys exist? And if you don't know that a single monkey exists, how would you know there are different types of monkeys? And each of those types of monkeys likes to eat different things. And they come from different places in the world, different countries and continents that have different climates. This initial lack of information becomes a hole in the learning. And as you get older, the hole just becomes bigger and deeper.
For those of you who don't have visual access to the video, I just wanted to share that on the screen, Michelle put three different pictures of monkeys in an inverted pyramid. And then she followed it with things that they eat and continents. And then there was a black hole in the middle that expanded as she talked about the hole getting larger over time.
Unfortunately, as
one thing that will affect the gap in learning is when the deaf blindness occurred, at birth or after birth. When a child is born with vision and then loses their sight, they will likely learn concepts differently than their peers who were born blind. When a child is born with vision and then loses their sight, they may remember things like the sky. Having a visual memory of the sky may help that child better form an understanding of, say, an airplane and how it may move in the air above them. Many children who are deaf-blind also have what I talked about before, cortical visual impairment, which is also called cerebral visual impairment, or CVI. CVI is the leading cause of blindness in children in the United States. It is caused by damage to the visual pathways in the brain, and it impacts visual processing. This means that a child's eyes may be able to see perfectly well, but they have trouble recognizing and paying attention visually, and the brain struggles to make sense of what the eyes are seeing. Some other children also have a similar issue with their hearing called auditory neuropathy or central auditory processing disorder. Similar to CVI, with this disorder, the inner ear can detect sound, but it has a problem sending the sound to the brain to be interpreted. These children struggle to make sense of the sounds around them. So let's talk about supporting learning. We're going to start by talking about routines. Routines are essential for supporting the learning process of children who are deaf-blind. Routines give meaning to actions and events while building a memory foundation for other learning. And they provide safety, a sense of safety and security. Routines include home routines like meal times, bath time, bedtime, as well as school routines, such as arriving at school, mealtime at school, transitioning from one classroom to another, and going home. The consistent use of routines serves a number of purposes for children and youth who are deaf-blind, especially those who are born deaf-blind. Routines help children build their communication skills, learn new concepts, access the general education curriculum, and improve interactions with others and their social skills. Like I said before, they also provide a sense of security and predictability to a child's day by helping them understand what is happening in the here and now and anticipate what is coming. Jen?
Sure, thank you. So routines, yes, they are important. We all probably know that if we have been down this path for very long. The thing I wanted to mention to everyone is that having witnessed with Andrew different occurrences where people who don't understand deafblindness, who don't understand routines that our kiddos require, and don't understand the nuances of just how our kids process information, they may tend to over communicate. I tend to give that a pictorial description, like layering communication, where someone will request something from our kids in school. This would happen, right? And then maybe there's not enough wait time. We've all heard wait time. It is critical, very critical. What happens if the wait time is not given to our children? The child needs to process that very next layer, and then more communication. They need to process that layer until they actually get back down to the original request. And this causes anxiety in our kids. It causes frustration. It just causes a lot of, in Andrew, it's caused behaviors where, you know, at school, maybe they don't understand what they're doing, and the multiple requests without the wait time. And he gives us communication back, not what they intended, but he's giving us communication back. So when we, as communication partners, as we layer requests like that, it actually does hinder the proper and effective responses from our children. And it does delay their ability to process and actually reply at all, or even responsively, like the original request was. And the wait time, silence is uncomfortable, generally speaking. And again, I'm speaking from my own perspective. I am very impatient. It is hard for me as a parent to Andrew. It was a lot harder in the beginning, but I still struggle with waiting, giving that time for him to respond. And the silence is uncomfortable, right? As a deafblind parent, it's not a natural response to just say something and stop talking and just wait. Sometimes that feels like it's forever, but it's essential. Our kids need that. So it's needed to allow them to process, and their ability, give them the ability to respond. And it is learned. It is not a natural thing for us. And giving this, we have found with Andrew that the frustration goes down, the behaviors, like he's much more responsive, and it's just better all around.
Thanks, Jen. In this video from the Washington Sensory Disability Services, we're going to see a mother and a child. It's an example of their bedtime routine.
Bedtime. How do you decide what's most important to include in a routine? First, ask the child's family how they do this routine at home. Christopher's mother developed a bedtime routine that included his favorite vanilla-scented ball. She tells him it's bedtime and then starts their little system.
Go to bed, and we tell them when it's time to change his diaper and whatnot. But she likes to play in bed. That's really the biggest thing. Lay down. You wanna lay down? We'll have a little visual that he thinks the same, so he knows what's happening. It's covered first. Then we squeak the ball.
His mother squeaks the ball and waits for him to reach for it.
You want your ball? Night night. Good night night. Do that. Night night. Night night.
Christopher is expected to take an active part in this routine. His mother moves at a slow pace that allows him to respond by moving his hand to get the ball. Christopher's bedtime. 1, pull up the covers. 2, squeak the ball. 3, wait for him to reach for it. 4, say goodnight and kiss him goodnight. His bedtime routine grew. They added more accessible communication, one of the keys to a good routine. How do you decide where to start when building a routine? Choose a physical routine that happens several times a day. Add a child's preference, such as the scented ball. Build in communication based on what's most accessible to the child. Christopher has high myopia, CVI, and a moderate to severe hearing loss.
So, as Jen talked about, another way to support learning is providing that processing or wait time for your child. This helps them make sense of what they've just experienced. They add that new information to their memory. It helps them slow down to decrease stress. As Jen said, when you continue to add more and more communicative layers on top of each other, that whole process starts over. And so, can you imagine the stress? It's as if someone is saying to you, go outside, pick up the sticks, mow the lawn, pick up the grass clippings when you're done, take them here, and just telling you everything in succession. You would be stressed. It stresses our kids out. And so slowing down, allowing that silence to take control and wait for your child decreases their stress, and it decreases their overstimulation and frustration. Respecting that processing time, that silence, is super important to building a trusting environment, to building a safe place for your child. So, what are things that you can do? After you communicate, sit with your child and wait in the uncomfortable silence. It can be very uncomfortable because, 20 seconds to us seems like 15 minutes sometimes. But we need to provide that. Another thing you can do is hold your hands open. Make them available for when the child is ready to engage with you. And again, provide all the time that is needed. Sometimes it's a lot longer than what we think. Another thing to keep in mind is if something unexpected happens, your child may need even more time. So if you ask them a question or communicate something to them, tell them to do something, and then say a train whistles outside, their processing has to restart because they did not expect that train whistle. So keeping that in mind helps you too. This slide has a video of Max. He is interacting with someone who is new to him, and he's also playing with a new toy. So 2 new things. Notice that it takes Max a while to process what is happening before he reaches out for this toy. So in that video, I don't know if you noticed because there was a lot of background noise. There's a woman sitting behind a young boy, Max, who is deafblind. And she has her arms around him. She has her face down by his. I believe she's kissing him on the forehead occasionally, but she taps her foot next to him to let him know that she's there with him. And at the beginning of the video, he kind of makes a little noise, and she echoes that back to him. So she's letting him know that she's there, but she's also not saying anything. She's waiting for him to reach out for that toy. And then the video ends with him reaching out for that toy. So, you know, sitting there behind him, she may have been thinking, this is taking forever. Is he ever going to reach out for this toy? But he did, because she provided him the processing time, the silence that he needed. So every child is different. Some don't struggle with touch, while others do. We need to watch and listen to the child and what they're telling us. Remember to embrace the silence and let the child reach out for you. Bonding through touch is crucial for family members and is the foundation of learning and trusting relationships. It is important to be respectful when beginning these tactile or touch interactions. The ideal situation is when the child touches you first. Then he is learning to reach out to the world around him. To let the child know of your presence, you can sit close to them and wait for them to discover you. Your leg may touch theirs. Your shoulder may touch theirs, but you're not moving around or making noise or reaching for them. Like I talked about before, you can make your hands available to the child and allow them to use your hands as they wish. If your palms are turned up and your hands are relaxed, it's like you're listening to the child. Often, this will encourage them to begin a game or a conversation with you. Another thing you can do is imitate their hand actions. That encourages them to continue to engage in the activity with you. Playing interactive hand games with your child is a great way to encourage them to use their hands while also having fun. Another thing you can do is use the hand under hand technique when you're introducing your child to something new or encouraging them to do something. This technique involves gently placing your hands underneath or alongside the hands of the child who's deafblind to help them explore and engage with the world around them. When hand under hand is used effectively, this technique provides respectful, tactile support to encourage children to interact and communicate. So a little challenge for you here. If you haven't already done this, try one of these strategies and see how your child reacts. You also may want to try these in different environments and with different people like extended family, because your child may react differently to them. This is also really great information for you to share with your school team. Jen?
Yes, thank you, Kristi. So for my son, touch has not really been a problem, or he's not really been very sensitive to touch. But we have recognized very early on that the pressure by which we touch him does make a difference. For example, soft touches, like maybe caressing his arm or his cheek, just, endearment touches, that will excite him and get him keyed up sometimes. Whereas more firm, deeper pressure actually brings him down and gives him that sense of calmness. It's almost as if it's just like Kristi talked about, that safety, that security, letting him know we are here, especially when he was younger and we were just learning all of this information. The other thing I did want to say kind of touches on more of the processes that we go through as parents with deafblind children and the growth that relates to that. It's a journey that we're on. We are learning. Our children are learning. Our school teams are learning. And this is about everyone around us on this journey with us. And, my husband and I often say, wow, we've arrived. This is great. Like, things are going really well. Andrew seems to be, kind of in his groove. We figured this out. Well, I laugh because it is funny. You have to laugh. But our kids grow, they develop, we adjust, we support, we come in and we give them what they need. And then when they grow, we're back to square one. We need to figure it out again. New processes, new routines. What does he or she need at this point? Things are a little different. So as your child learns and gains more independence, we grow with them. That is true progress and true development.
Thank you. So I have another video for you. This one also is from the Washington Deafblind Project. In this video, you will see a young child working with her early interventionist. She has a whisk in one hand, and she has a metal bowl with some toys in the other. And you'll see how the early interventionist uses hand under hand to get this young lady to engage.
How do we get her to use her hands? Don't grab for her hand. Instead, touch her arm.
Do you feel that? You feel me bang, bang, banging? Is Ann banging? Bang, 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 bang. That's my Ann banging. You want to help? Want to help? Good job! Yay! That's the job. Where you kind of start doing something and just let her. That's what you guys go through that. You want to help? Yeah. You want to help? You want to help me? You try your maraca. Oh, you are. Good help. Good job. Okay. Help me. Good job.
See there,
You like it? Tell me when you're ready. We'll do it again. Oh, yay. You want to give it a punch? You know what? I'm going to take another chance now. Ooh, what's that? Did I bring another pen? I'm going to bang over there. I'm going to bang over here. Another pen. You want to help?
But how do we get her to use her hands? Use your hand under her hand. Wait for her to reach for your hand. Waiting helps children become active learners.
Okay, so now on to planning your child's educational program. The IEP or IFSP team is responsible for creating the educational program that best fits the needs of your child. It's made up of a number of individuals, as you likely know, but the most important team member or members are the family, are you. You're most important. You know your child best and can advocate for, educate the team of, and empower your child to help make the educational program one that meets their unique needs. Chances are that the school team doesn't have the expertise that you think they do. I'm not saying they're bad educators, but sometimes we just assume if they're providing educational programming to our children, they have all the knowledge and training they need. Sometimes this isn't true. This is why it is so important for you to step in as that expert. You're the expert on your child. Another important team member is someone with expertise in the education of students who are deafblind. If your child's team does not currently include an individual with this specific knowledge or training, your state deafblind project may be able to provide or assist you in finding one. They also may be able to provide support to the educational team providing the programming. Planning your child's program involves many pieces. Having high quality educational data is key. It's so important. This includes how the child uses their vision, hearing, and other senses to access information, communication modes and skills, analysis of the student's behavior as a form of communicative intent, concept development and learning needs, learning media and assistive technology needs, daily living skills, orientation and mobility needs, opportunities that they have to interact with others, including family members, peers, and service providers. One resource that we suggest to teams is the Are Intervener Services Appropriate for Your Student Who is Deafblind, an IEP discussion guide. That's a long title, so let's just call it the IEP discussion guide. Let's see. We posted this on the Charge website. It's linked in the resources. I think Lily probably put it into the chat. She's nodding yes. While this guide does talk about considering services for interveners, it can provide support for the IEP team in different ways. It's not just for determining if an intervener is needed. In the third webinar of this series, I will discuss intervener services and how this guide can provide support to the IEP team when making a determination about if these services are a necessary support for your child. But tonight, I want to highlight some of the sections of this guide that can help you as you think through your child's strengths and areas that need support. The first two sections have to do with how your child uses their residual or usable vision and hearing. The guide prompts you with questions and has areas to list supports, accommodations, and the person who's responsible for providing those services to meet those needs. The last four sections are set up like the first two, with questions and areas to detail how the identified needs are met. And these sections all have to do with access to information, communication, trusting relationships and social interactions, and conceptual learning. While this guide is not all-encompassing, it is quite thorough and has been shown to aid IEP teams in crafting educational programs that are stronger and can improve student outcomes. Jen?
Thank you, Kristi. With the IEP and the IEP team, I remember my first few, very nervous. I wanted to make sure that I was prepared, properly prepared. It almost felt like I was going into a battle, and I'm sure you all can relate to that. But what I did, and for me it was pivotal, and that was changing my perspective on who these people are to me and who these people are to my son. And I actually looked at them as partners. Partnership, to me, first of all, it sounded better, right? And it felt better. I was in this, and I am in this for the long haul, as you all are. And it's crucial that we get on the same page as much as possible. So again, my experience has been that I really, really honed in on partnership. And for me, the IEP team, I feel, and in my experience, has been an asset to the development of Andrew and our son, and the relationships, because it's every year, right? As people transition, we have built those partnerships and relationships, and they have helped us move through the process every year. And they allow us, being the parent, to become a key collaborative partner to guide the team. I'm not saying that everyone agrees with me. That is not the case. What I am saying is that I know my son best, and it is imperative to me that I am able to express to our IEP team what I need them to do for our son because of what I know he needs. And again, this is all to help them to have a better day, to help my child have more success and more better days. And we are in this together. And I say those words often to our team. So, you know, the whole bottom line to all of this is that, you know, our children are able to grow and develop because of us being on a better working term. And I have very early on reached out to our Deafblind project, our state Deafblind project. If you have not reached out to your Deafblind project, or you're not sure who that might be, we have resources. We can help lead you to some of those resources. But that organization and that program has been so amazing for my own development to assist Andrew, and also with the whole IEP team, and just moving the process forward in a positive, just good momentum where Andrew can be supported properly.
Thanks. All right, so some important IEP or IFSP reminders. The first one is about coding your child as the primary disability label of deafblind. A child who has a combined vision and hearing loss has unique support needs. Making decisions about that primary disability label with your team should be based on your child's individual needs. Having your child appropriately identified is to ensure that their specific requirements for their needs are met through goals, supports, accommodations, services, and placement. Potential areas of need could include orientation and mobility, social and emotional development, communication, curriculum modifications. I could go on, but I won't. And at every step along the way, assessment is crucial. Sensory deficits can easily mislead even experienced educators into underestimating or sometimes even overestimating what the child needs and what their strengths are, and can sometimes lead to inappropriate educational programs. We'll talk more about these things, goals, supports, accommodations, modifications, in our next session in 2 weeks. So I hope you come back. Jen?
So for Andrew and for our process that we have been through, our own experience, the IEP team suggested that we list Andrew's qualification as multiple disabilities. You may or may not have ever heard that. I continued to advocate for Andrew and had his classification changed and updated to deafblind, because he is deafblind, number one, but more importantly, it actually gives him the access by being in the classification deafblind. It more accurately describes him on his needs and gives him the access that he needs with his disability. So how specific it is does matter. The specific term deafblind, right? It is specific to our kids and directly affects the way they process information. And it is very different from all other children. So we need to be specific as possible when and where we can. And that was my goal. Overall, I said this earlier, and it is, I really, I have lived this, and I try to advocate for other families to know that this is a journey. It's continually changing. It's about educating the team, educating ourselves about our child, and it's new and different for the school team. I recognize that. I give them grace when and where I can, and I always try to give them the benefit of the doubt. And just as when we heard the term deafblind for the first time, I had no idea what that meant. But educating the team and collaborating with the team when and where you can, for me, was key. And with that, Andrew had the best access and continues to have the best access that I can provide and the most conducive environment.
Thanks, Jen. Okay. Within our slideshow, we do have a number of resources. We did not go over all of these. These resources are simply for you if you want to dive deeper, get some more information, look for some things that maybe you could share with friends, family, educational teams. But we have 2 pages of that. And then now it's time for questions. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. All right. Do we have questions?
I haven't seen any questions come in yet, so I'll ask a question while folks are typing. I really encourage folks to ask questions. This is a great chance to get to have a direct Q&A with our professionals here. So one of the things that you both had talked about was advocating for the deafblind eligibility label for students' IEPs. Now, is it I know that states vary on their a definition of deafblindness and even their inclusion of deafblindness as a disability criteria for IEPs. Do you have any information to provide families for that based on what state they might live in, or any feedback on what to do if they're getting pushback from school teams?
I don't know if you want to answer this, Jen. I can provide some information just that I know of. Every state does have the classification of deafblind. So if you feel that that is an appropriate label for your child, and you want the school team to use that, you have every right to ask for it. I do hear time and time again about pushback from the schools. They'll say, maybe they don't have an expert in deafblindness, or they don't have a teacher of kids who are deafblind. Well, there are really only 3 states in the nation that recognize teachers of the deafblind. So that is a very valid response from a school district. What I would say is the State Deafblind Project and many other organizations and centers offer professional development. And there is professional development available specifically targeting deafblindness. And so, if the school says, we don't have anybody who's skilled in that, okay, well, what a great thing that you have access to professional development for these people. Jen, do you have anything from your experience? Because I'm sure you...
I do. So the original multiple disabilities was requested or suggested when we first went into the school system. I didn't understand the difference. I quickly came to understand that, you know, being deafblind, Andrew needed that because it more aligned with the way that he learns. And that, what I mean by that is, you know, my child is in a classroom, it's an ACC classroom that, to explain that, there's multiple grades in the one classroom. And Andrew is different from most of those children. He learns differently from them. He, in multiple ways, right? The deaf-blind classification, that spoke directly to how he learns. And to me, that was most important. Now, we do have a secondary classification, and that is the multiple disabilities. I'm okay with that. What was most important to me was having the primary as deaf-blind. I don't recall that they really pushed back on that, but they might have because they were unaware. Typically, when I am presented with that, you know, kind of pushback, I try to explain why, and usually we can meet in the middle.
That's helpful. Thanks for answering. We've got a couple comments and questions that have come through. One is, thank you so much for hosting this. I'm an educational sign language interpreter in North Carolina and have gone through the deafblind intervener level 1 program. So that's exciting to hear. Congrats for going through that, and thank you for being here today. All right, and then we have a question. Is too much learning a thing? Can we be overwhelming in our teaching if multiple resources were provided? Or when children are young, are they more like sponges so they can absorb what they can?
I would go back to what we said about providing that silence and that wait time. As long as you're doing that and you're moving at the pace of your child, I think that, you know, children learn. They want to communicate with you. And sometimes that communication is not what we expect. It could be behavior that Jen talked about. It could be how they're breathing. If they start breathing faster, maybe that means they're excited and they're telling you, do that again, do that again. It could be, you know, sign language. It could be moving their eyes or touching things with their feet. You have to watch them and see how they're communicating with you. And that learning just goes on and on and on. And so I think while the world of deafblindness is so different, children do want to learn and communicate. And so the overwhelming part comes when you're just presenting, and you're not providing that wait time for them. Jen?
I would agree 100%. You know, for our son, he loves school. He really loves learning. And just the environment of being at school, he loves that. But as he has grown and as he is able to provide us with non-communication, different things that we know, you know, what he is meaning, what he prefers, what he doesn't, we have learned the programs at school, specifically math and reading, spelling, phonics, all of that, that work the best. And that has been wonderful, right? We have learned that through Andrew giving us feedback, listening to him, watching him, data. right? Data is a big thing. We want to see data. How are our kids responding? There is data. You can ask for that. I've asked for that. And that's how we came to understand what works better, what we need to stop doing, and be more focused and more streamlined on those things. And again, this has come through years of working with the IEP team, me questioning, what are you doing in class? What do we need to do at home? And some of those things we couldn't support, but some we have. And so it's collaboration. But Andrew does love learning, as you said, Kristi. And the other thing is that our kids just want to be like their peers. They want to be accepted, right? We all have that innate desire. So.
Yeah, great answers. And I think along with that, I think a lot of times when we as adults think of teaching and learning, we think of asking a lot of questions. And I think you both did a great job of really showing and talking about different ways that you can teach that doesn't involve just like that overwhelming repeated question after question. So I think that's something important to keep in mind too. All right, we've got a couple questions. We can probably get to these before we end. One question, I know Texas is working on a test for certified teacher of deafblind. What other states acknowledge this certification currently?
Sure. So Utah and Illinois both have certifications or endorsements for teachers of the deafblind. But I will tell you that there are other states, and I always think of California, who include on their teaching certificates for teachers of the visually impaired and or teachers of the deaf and or teachers of students with extensive support needs. So those three certificates have listed on there that those teachers are appropriately trained to provide services to children who are deafblind. Now, I can't, I don't know if you would ask the teachers if they feel confident in that, but I do know that there are those 3 states that have specific endorsements for teachers who are teachers of the deafblind: Texas, Utah, Illinois.
Thank you. We have one more question that I think this one will actually be answered in at least part 3. The question is if there's any advice for states that do not acknowledge the intervener role. So I think we'll hold off on that one, come back for part 3. For now, thank you for everyone for joining today. Thank you to our presenters for this great first part of this series. Thank you to our interpreters. And I put in the chat all of the resources that were discussed tonight, as well as the registration link for part 2 of this series, which will be Tuesday, April 30th at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. This will be this has been recorded and will be available on the Charge Center Foundation website within the next week or so. All right, thank you everyone, and we hope to see you back in 2 weeks. All right, bye.
Bye-bye.